Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 958, 958. November the 15th, 2019, Friday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Extremely busy day, news day today. A lot to get to. I don't even know if I'll be able to get to everything here. I'm certainly going to give it my best shot, so let's get to it. Well, we're now learning a little bit more about the details. As you know, I mentioned yesterday or maybe the day before, I can't remember, that John Durham has interviewed Alexander Down the Hatch Downer. Now, apparently this, in fact, we know for sure now that this interview occurred in London about a month ago. But we're now learning a couple more details about this, and it appears that Durham did not just interview Alexander Down the Hatch Downer. It appears that he also interviewed Erica Thompson, who Papagalopoulos says is an Australian intelligence agent. And she was, of course, the role that she played is she functioned as an assistant to, that was her role in the plot, to function as an assistant to Alexander Down the Hatch Downer. She is the one who contacted Papagalopoulos and set up the meeting between he and Down the Hatch Downer. We also know that while in London, Durham viewed the confidential cable. We're talking about the cable, which we've all viewed by now, although there was some redactions there, but we've seen most of the cable. And it was the cable that Alexander Down the Hatch Downer sent to Canberra, the capital there, or where the government is there in Australia, after his meeting with Papagalopoulos. The cable was sent on the 19th of May of 2016. So it would have been right after he met with Papagalopoulos, he sent this cable back to his home country in Australia. Keep in mind, Downer was the most high level, the top diplomat for Australia in the United Kingdom. Of course, we have Downer going on Australian TV shortly, let's see, what about a week ago, less than a week ago. He went on Australian TV. He was asked about this, and of course he says that now he would never use the word investigation. He would only use a word like inquiry or review or something like that, but he would not use the word investigation. But he said that he was interviewed regarding this review by Durham. He says he cannot talk about the details of it, but he says that he's sticking to this line that he was not part of any plot. He says he was not part of any plot. Well, here's the problem. Here is the problem. Well, first let me do it this way. If I'm Durham, the first question I would ask him, in fact, two questions I would ask Downer, I would say, do you know Stefan Halper? Now, I already know the answer to that question is yes. We know that Downer and Halper know each other quite well. Why? Because we have a photograph from 2011 that shows Stefan Halper standing at a podium speaking to an audience. Sitting to his right, directly to his right, is Alexander Down the Hatch Downer. We know that they both are affiliated and associated with Hackloot, the private intelligence firm in the UK. So they have there's a lot of other people within British and other Western intelligence that they both know individually, and we can assume, therefore, that they know these people collectively. So it's hard to imagine Downer saying that he did not know Halper, and I'm sure he was asked, do you know, or have you ever worked with, or whatever, Halper? Obviously, we know that he does know Stefan Halper, the fat man. The next question I'd ask him is, do you know Joseph Mifsud? Now, it's hard to believe that Downer would not know Mifsud, because, again, they run all in the same circles around this London Center for International Law, which is where they lured Papagalopoulos to. They also have this other place that they lure people to, which is where they lured Flynn, where they give these seminars. And so we have all these connections. It's very, very difficult to believe that Downer, of course we know, he does know Halper. He almost certainly knows Mifsud. And he fits so perfectly into the plot. He fits so perfectly into the plot that it's hard to believe that he was not a part of it. And you have to ask yourself, why would the highest ranking diplomat in the UK for Australia have any interest whatsoever in talking to a unpaid, low-level advisor to the Trump campaign, especially when Downer didn't like Trump? He was supporting the rotten reverend. Why would a high-level guy who runs around with people like the Clintons, the super global elites, why would he waste his time with such a low-level guy as Papadopoulos? He wouldn't. When is the last time a very, very important high-level individual made a dash or made a beat down the path to get to you, to talk to you, to have something to do with you? Never, probably. It doesn't happen in the real world. You have to have some motive, some reason. What was the motive? What was the reason that such a high-level diplomat would even know about a guy like Papadopoulos? Now, the story is that Papadopoulos wrote a op-ed, which he was asked to write. He was asked to write this op-ed. The op-ed goes into the paper, and in this op-ed, he makes a comment that's negative about David Cameron. And so the excuse is that Downer wanted to have this meeting with Papadopoulos to give him a bunch of crap over the negative comments he made in this article about Cameron. Now, again, why would a high-level diplomat give a damn about what some unpaid staffer in a campaign he doesn't even like would have to say about Cameron? And what he said was perfectly justified, because Cameron first made negative comments about Trump, and Papadopoulos, working for the Trump campaign, is simply responding. This shouldn't have even... Any other high-level senior diplomat would have read that and said, whoop-de-doo. And if anything, even if he did want to respond to it, he would have responded to it from his assistant or writing an op-ed of his own or something like that. Why did he need to go, to get a personal meeting for a guy like Downer, a high-level guy like that, to go to the effort to have a meeting arranged with someone like Papadopoulos? There has to be some greater motivation than just to grill him over a negative comment he made about Cameron. And this is Durham's problem. Durham is looking at this just like you or me or anyone else. And he's going, wait a minute. This is not real world passing the sniff test. This doesn't happen in the real world. There's something else that motivated Down the Hatch Downer. And how convenient. You see, what happened, Mifsud planted the dope on Papadopoulos. Halper was supposed to extract it, but he blew it. He got angry. He got mad. He made Papadopoulos nervous with the way he was pressing Papadopoulos, so Papadopoulos clammed up, in which case Halper gets up from the table and leaves his honeypot behind, who tries to get Papadopoulos drunk and take him up to the hotel. But Papadopoulos isn't buying. He gets the hell out of there. So now they've planted the dope on Papadopoulos, but they didn't actually get to collect it, to get the goods on him. So what did they have to do? Well, they had to call in the heavy hitter, which was Alexander Down the Hatch Downer. They called him in from the bullpen to come in and get the save. And they probably said, you know what, he doesn't even have to tell you that. Just go talk to him about anything. Talk to him about baseball. We don't care. But as soon as you get done, go to the embassy in the UK, make a report on it, then send a wire over to your government in Australia and let them know that Papadopoulos said that the Russians have dirt on Hillary or have some damaging information on Hillary. Even if he doesn't say it. Doesn't matter if he says it. We know he knows this because we planted it on him. All you got to do is just sit down and have some drinks with him and then say he said it. Because Papadopoulos disputes it. Papadopoulos says that he remembers the conversation with Downer and he doesn't recall saying anything about Russians having dirt on Hillary to Downer. So, the question is there any record? Is there any record? We know that Papadopoulos said that Downer was bragging about working for Hackloot, and he thought that Downer was doing that to intimidate him. He also said that Downer kept playing with his phone, kept picking up his phone, pointing at Papadopoulos, looking at it, and looking at himself, and doing this. And Papadopoulos thought he was being recorded. So the question is, it's Papaglopoulos' word against Down the Hatch Downer. Who's telling the truth and who's lying? Now the only way we'll know is if in fact there is a transcript or a recording of their conversation. And at this time we don't know if there is or not. So we'll just have to wait to see how it shakes itself out. But that's what we know at this time. Well, the Rotten Reverend is doing what she normally does over in the UK, overstaying her welcome. You know, the Rotten Reverend's kind of like a fish dinner the day after. It starts to stink, and you just want to get it out of the house. So the Rotten Reverend is over there in London talking to an interviewer on the BBC who asked her why she did not include Margaret Thatcher in her book of Gutsy Women. Which is a very good question, because probably if you want to talk about one of the most gutsy women in the last 100 years, you would have a rough time not putting Margaret Thatcher on the list. She was a very gutsy woman, and she was the head of the UK, and even if you didn't like her policies or what have you, you can't deny that she was a very strong, powerful woman. She had a very commanding presence for a woman. And the Rotten Reverend Clinton responded by saying, well, Margaret Thatcher didn't try to make a positive difference for women, basically dissing her. Now, in the UK, even the people who did not like Thatcher's policies do regard her as, having been, a pretty, great, even if you didn't agree with the policies, a very powerful and very accomplished woman in the UK. And again, even the people over there that don't like her policies will admit that she was a very powerful woman and a very successful woman, and certainly she would meet the definition of a gutsy woman. So the Rotten Reverend Clinton really stepped in the doo-doo here, because I think that she assumed, because she was talking to BBC, they're so far left-wing, that they would like that comment, but apparently she doesn't know that in the UK, even people who disagreed with Thatcher's policies have a great deal of respect for her and her legacy as a very powerful woman in the history of the UK politics, and not just that, in the world. But to say that she did not make a difference for women is ridiculous. The very fact that she became the head of the state in the UK, that in itself, that accomplishment in itself, would have made a difference in women. And I'm sure a lot of her policies benefited women in a lot of ways. So the Rotten Reverend Clinton, like a 2-day-old fish dinner, stinks. And I think that they probably had enough of her, and my guess is that she'll be moving on. Having come over to the UK and dropped a turd in the punch bowl, she'll be on her way back to some other country where she can suck up someone else. Suck up to someone else. Now, there's something very interesting happened last night. At about 7:30 last night, this story broke. And no one really knows what to make of it. I have 3 thoughts on it, which I think what I make of it. And the basic nuts and bolts of this breaking story that happened, it was after 7 o'clock, is that Trump and A.G. Barr had a meeting in the White House. And it's believed to have been an unscheduled, possibly an emergency meeting. And the reason why we believe it's unscheduled is because no reporters have actually found anywhere on the president's schedule when they looked to see that A.G. Barr, that he was supposed to meet with Barr. Not only that, the timing of the meeting was, in fact, ended up delaying Trump by 45 minutes of his departure time to go to the rally in Louisiana. So he got delayed by 45 minutes. He didn't even have time to go out and talk to the fake news as he normally does. So all we know at this point is that A.G. Barr and Trump had a meeting in the late afternoon, and in that meeting with Trump and Barr was the White House counsel, Pat Cipollone, or Cipollone, however you pronounce it. And then, as soon as that meeting ended, Trump had another meeting, which included his chief of staff, Mulvaney, and his communication people, Stephanie Grisham and Gidley. This caused Trump to be 45 minutes late of his departure time to get to the rally. So we can only hope that Trump says something in the rally to give us some indication of what he may have learned or what was so important about this, what seems to be unscheduled or emergency meeting with A.G. Barr. Now, I have three things I think it could be. One, it could be having something to do with the release of the IG report, or something that Barr and Durham have discovered in their investigation, which warrants Trump knowing about it. Or it could have something to do with the rollout of this new policy or this new program that Barr is going to do for the Department of Justice to fight gun violence. Or it could have something to do with the rollout of this new program they have to combat Chinese, stealing intellectual property from American companies. As you know, there was just a lawsuit, not a lawsuit, an actual criminal matter that was just resolved. The Chinese man was found guilty, working for the Chinese government. They assume, I don't know if they proved that, but they certainly assume that, and he had hacked into an American manufacturing company and gotten a bunch of documents and things and such. So it could have something to do with the Chinese issue, could have something to do with this gun rollout, the gun violence rollout, but I don't think so, because those are two things that have been in the pipeline. Barr is going to have an actual, press conference. He's going to discuss in both of those issues what their DOJ's program is for dealing with those two issues. One being gun violence, and the other being China's theft of intellectual property. Those are not things that I would think that would suddenly emerge as an emergency. That would be such an emergency that it would be an unscheduled meeting that would delay Trump by 45 minutes of getting out of the White House, getting to the rally. So I think it will have something much more to do with something that Durham has discovered, or something about the IG report. That would be my guess. I'm just guessing, because we still don't know. The Gateway Pundit. The Gateway Pundit's reporting that documents have been leaked from the Ukrainian General Prosecutor's Office, which show complex money transfers from foreign sources to the Biden and Kerry families. Apparently, there was a slush fund which is owned by Devon Archer, John Kerry Jr., and Hunter Biden. I think that firm is called Seneca. And apparently, there were payments totaling close to $4 million that were transferred to the Biden and Kerry families after the investigation into Burisma ended. It was forced to end. So there you go. Now, this should be front page news, but it's not. I don't know why. This should be front page news, but it's not, and I don't know why. Here we have documents leaked from the Ukrainian General Counsel's Prosecutor's Office showing this complex system of transferring money from various sources to another source, then to this slush fund company, which then made payment to this company owned by the Kerrys and Hunter Biden. Payments totaling close to $4 million. And all of this happening right after the investigation into Burisma was ended. Madam Botox says that Trump must show proof of innocence. Well, like I said, I've been watching Pelosi now for the past year or so. I'm absolutely convinced that she's going senile. I mean, she's as bad off as quid pro quo Joe or Reagan in his last year in office, or any, when you see people, Pelosi is, I think, either 80 or 81. She's clearly having mental failings. I've been seeing this now for about a year. She's slurring her speech. She, like Biden, cannot hold a thought. She cannot complete a sentence without a lot of errors, slipping over her words. Sounds like she's got marbles on her mouth when she's talking. Her thoughts go everywhere. She can't hold a thought for very long. And to make a statement like this is just unbelievable, to say that Trump must show proof of his innocence. No, in the United States of America, you don't have to prove you're innocent. The other guy has to prove you are guilty. Here in America, you're innocent until proven guilty. You don't have to prove your innocence. Someone has to prove your guilt. But even if that were true, in a real situation, Trump, the president, would have the ability to have his lawyers present to defend him. He would also have people who would be able to call witnesses in his defense. None of that is being allowed to happen in the Pelosi Schiff Inquisition. But this doesn't surprise me coming out of the mouth of Madame Botox, because like I said, I have determined several months back, I said I honestly believe that Pelosi is having mental failings. You know, her mind is failing her. And this is proof. She is some kind of a puppet. Obviously, we know that the Lawfare Group is running the show. Remember, we covered this right after Trump was elected back in 2016. As soon as Trump was elected, the Lawfare Group immediately got together with Obama, who set up Valerie Jarrett in his Washington, D.C. mansion to begin running operations against Trump. And the plan was to use the law as a weapon. So this Lawfare Group is working and has been working. They're behind all of this coup stuff on the paper side, on the legal side, are behind all of this. And whether it was the Mueller thing, the Ukraine thing, whatever it is, it's the Lawfare Group. And it's failing so badly, it has been such an epic fail, that now Pelosi and the bug-eyed fool Schiff, along with the penguin Jerry Nadler, are requesting more Lawfare lawyers come over to help them try to figure this thing out, because it's going so badly for them. It's crashing and burning, and they don't know what to do. Guess who is the newest paid legal consultant for MSPMS-NBC? Who is the newest legal consultant for PMS NBC? MSPMS-NBC. Andrew Wiseass. That's right, Andrew Wiseass. And he's now giving legal advice. And he says that the Democrats in this impeachment need to focus on election interference and they need to continue comparing Trump to Nixon. This guy's nuts. And he better lawyer up, by the way. He better lawyer up. He was part of the coup. Let's take a look at this statement. First of all, I studied, as most of you know, Watergate to the nth degree. I know everything about Watergate. Everything there is to know in the public record, I know it. Trust me. The Trump situation with Ukraine has absolutely nothing in common with Nixon and the break-in at the Watergate or the cover-up or any of that, anything else, the slush fund or any of that. The coup against Trump has a lot more to do with Nixon than Trump and Ukraine. And I think that Wiseass knows this. He's just out doing what he's getting paid to do. But he better lawyer up, because he was part of the coup plot. So anyway, he's just blowing bullshit right there. I mean, that's just pure bullshit, 100% bullshit. And I could prove it. I just don't have enough time. And also, but I do agree with him on the fact that they need to focus on the election interference regarding Ukraine. Oh yeah, they need to focus a lot on the election interference in 2016 regarding Ukraine and the Democrats, because we know it was a Democratic operative who was working with corrupt Ukrainians and also deep state bureaucrats, both in Ukraine and in the U.S., as well as apparently, it appears, some FBI personnel were involved in this as well, and all of their efforts in the early stages of the coup against Trump. That's certainly what they need to be looking into regarding the 2016 elections, Mr. Wiseass. One American News. Former CIA officer Brad Johnson is on One American News saying that Ciaramella was hand-picked by Mr. Potato Head John Brennan to work in the White House for the National Security Council. He says at the very least, Brennan would have had to know and signed off on Ciaramella's assignment. Now, okay, I'm 100% with him on knowing that, yeah, Brennan, the head of the CIA, does sign off on all the people who go to work at the NSC. All the CIA people who are assigned to the NSC to work in the White House are signed off on by the CIA director. Fact. Now, as far as whether or not Brennan handpicked Ciaramella, I don't know for sure, but that's the allegation made by former CIA officer Brad Johnson to One American News. But it certainly makes sense, because Brennan certainly would have, he absolutely did sign off on Ciaramella, but whether or not he handpicked Ciaramella, I don't know. But it would make sense if he did, because then it would explain who all those tweets were to from Mr. Potato Head. He's clearly been encouraging people within the deep state, and specific people I'm sure he was speaking to take various action against Trump. So that would explain Mr. Potato Head essentially giving the marching orders to Ciaramella. That would explain Mr. Potato Head's tweets and the reciprocal action happening by Ciaramella. Here is probably one of the most important stories of the day, if we haven't already had enough important stories. The Washington Post is reporting that the members of the small group, and remember, the small group was the tight little cabal of people that Comey put together to micromanage first the exoneration of the rotten Reverend Clinton for her crimes, and then the coup against Trump. So the individuals who are in the small group are, of course, Comey put the small group together. He's the head of it. Then we had McCabe, Silly Sally Yates, John Carlin, Mary McCord, Peters Ben Strokanas, along with Lisa Page, Baker, Michael Corton, and all these individuals. We are learning from this Washington Post story that all these small group participants are not being allowed to include written rebuttals during the principal review phase of the IG report, which is the phase we're in now, where all the principals who are targeted, all the people targeted, get to see the specific things about them that's in the IG report, and they generally are allowed to do an actual rebuttal with their lawyer, and that would appear in the IG report. Then it would be followed by the IG having his rebuttal to their rebuttal. But apparently, Inspector General Huckleberry Horowitz has decided to break from this, what generally is regarded as a rule of practice. This is how it's done. But he is not allowing this to happen. Inspector General Horowitz is saying, nope, you are not going to be allowed. I am not going to put your written rebuttal into the report. He is going to allow them to do an audio recording and do an audio recording of the problems that they have with what's in the report about them, and that will be kept on file in the records at the Department of Justice and the Inspector General. But he is not, for whatever reason, is not going to allow them to have the rebuttal in his report. And that's going away from what's always done, has always been done previously with the Inspector General. So you have to wonder, why is Inspector General Huckleberry Horowitz doing this? Well, I don't know for sure, but I can speculate. I would think that the reason he's not doing it is because he knows that all of these targets are going to come loaded for bear with their lawyer with an entire narrative that they want to spin in his report. And Horowitz, having spent all this time and all these man hours and all this money, and he's also had multiple meetings with various other people working on this, including Durham and Barr and the one guy out in Utah, what's his name? I forget now. Huber. All these various individuals, Horowitz has learned too much, and he also knows that Barr is not going to tolerate that kind of chicanery. They're not going to allow all these people's lawyers to come in and try to spin some counter narrative and try to, I guess, question the findings in the IG report. The IG spent too much time, he's put together too much evidence, and he's not going to let these people try to manipulate what they're producing in the IG report. So that is my guess. And it's not just these people who've been named as targets. All the people I just named are targets and are going to be there with their lawyers going through this principal review process and are not going to be allowed to have a written reply, just an audio reply, which we'll never know, we'll never hear. But the other people who are included, who are not part of the small group, who are outside the small group, but are targets in the IG report, who are going to be brought in and also will not be allowed to make any written rebuttals in the report, are the following individuals: the rotten Reverend Clinton, Rodenstein, Uncle Bob, the executioner Mueller, Andrew Wiseass, Christopher Steele, Glenn Simpson, Mr. Potato Head John Brennan, the unwitting idiot James Clapper, Bruce and Nellie Orr. None of the individuals, including the small group individuals I named, are going to be permitted to have their lawyers spin a narrative into the IG report. They can make an audio presentation. It will not appear in the report and probably will never be heard by anybody. Very interesting development right there. We had Sessions go on Fox News and talk about how he's all in for Trump and how he thinks the whole impeachment inquisition is a farce and the whole 9 yards. And he's 100% behind Trump all the way. And it's again, it's a little frustrating. Is this the same Jeff Sessions that was the Attorney General that allowed Rodenstein to? Didn't Sessions notice that Rodenstein was running the same type, exactly the same type of coup plot when he was in charge? Should have been in charge. I mean, again, as I've said before, I don't think Sessions is a bad guy. I don't buy either of the stories that are out there. I'm perfectly cool with people out there who do buy into one of these two things. I just don't. That's fine. We're not always going to agree on things. Some people think Sessions was I guess Q for a long time. It said Sessions is going to be the guy that's going to uncover everything and this type of thing. I never believed that, really. I never really believed also that Sessions was the bad guy and was working for the deep state. I never believed either of those two things. What I did believe was that Sessions is just a good guy and really did support Trump, but was in way over his head. And he found himself in a situation where at that moment in time in history, we really needed a very strong Attorney General with some serious backbone, and I just don't think that that's the makeup of Jeff Sessions. And so I think that he's a good guy, but he was the wrong man for the job at that time. He may do a good job as a senator. I understand all that, but what I need to hear from Sessions for me to ever really be comfortable with him again, I need to hear him just come out and admit that he dropped the ball, that he was weak, and that there was a coup plot going on, and for some strange reason, he wasn't able to sniff it out. And I don't know why, because me and you, all of you, most of you, millions of other people were sniffing all around it. We knew all about it. We knew all about the coup that was going on, how Sessions could not know it, how he could put a creep like Rodenstein in charge and watch all that stuff go down. I just can't. I can't do it. I cannot do it. And that's just where it is for me. Although the thing going on down in Alabama with the senator down there, I mean, I don't know. I mean, Sessions. I mean, isn't there anybody better? I mean, Doug Jones, Sessions, the other guy, the religious guy. I wish Alabama would just come up with a good conservative or libertarian type guy who could run for that Senate seat as a Republican and win in Alabama. But anyway, it's Alabama. We'll let you people figure it out, and hopefully you'll get the job done. Rand Paul says if impeachment comes to the Senate, he is going to force a vote that will force Hunter Biden to testify. Lindsey Graham saying if that comes to a trial in the Senate, which he doesn't really says he doesn't even want to have a trial in the Senate, but if McConnell forces it, he says that he is going to force the whistleblower. So there you go. Graham says he'll force the whistleblower. Rand Paul says he'll force Hunter Biden to testify. We'll see. We will see. Alrighty, I am out of time. I still have 2 more pages of notes. Just too much news to get to today. We'll have to get to this tomorrow. I appreciate you tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. You guys have a good night. See you. Bye.